So the year is pretty much at its end, or at least it's at the end of releases I care about for the Switch for the remainder of the year. It's been a few years since I've done a video highlighting my favorite releases from the previous year, so it's about time to pump one out. I've been meaning to and just getting lazy every single time. I tried my best to keep this list diverse and not filled with 10 of the exact same genre, because if I had done that, it would have ended up pretty much being half of RPGs, which may not be something that everyone's interested in. Of course, I still feel like these are 10 of the best games to drop this year, so I'd say it's still a pretty definitive list of my top 10 favorite Switch games of the year. The video originally spawned out of a request from someone in one of my Discords to suggest 10 games to their younger brother of what they should play, as he just recently got a Switch. So without further ado, here's that list. At number 10 is Lapis Labyrinth. It's a casual side-scrolling RPG. It's very chaotic. You're attacking and collecting loot at the exact same time, so there's a lot visually going on, as you're going to see in this footage over here. It's very rewarding, a little bit high stress sometimes when everything's kind of going crazy, but a fun stress, if that makes any sense. It's got very, very cute chibi characters, and there's a good amount of them to choose from. The Hunter, a bunch of other people I forgot, because I played that game months ago when it first came out. But it's very visually appealing. A lot of bright colors, very vibrant art style, and the music is very upbeat and fast-paced to match. It's a fun game overall without being like overly stressful in a negative fashion. Just you feel, again, it's like playing a really fun game that does stress you out a little bit in terms of it being very chaotic. But again, despite posing a decent challenge in later levels especially, there's times you're going to find yourself not realizing one of your party members has died because you're so busy trying to collect all the loot and get through the dungeon in a reasonable amount of time. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, and definitely on the more casual spectrum of things, definitely a game worth checking out. At number 9 is Ashen. If you are a big fan of the Souls series, this is about as faithful as it can get without just being Dark Souls. It features a different art style from Dark Souls for sure. It still kind of looks dark, but a little less bleak than Dark Souls. It has what I would like to call RuneScape meets Dark Souls type of art style, with very minimalist looking characters, faceless, and all that stuff. It's unique enough to feel like its own game and necessary, while still feeling familiar enough for those who are a fan of Dark Souls. Again, when it comes to copying it, and not so much in a negative way, but just because Souls does it right, this is that game. You get a very useful NPC partner who you can turn off if you want an additional challenge to it, but it reminds me a lot of Code Vein in the way that the NPC is actually useful. It can actually end up saving your butt a lot of the times, and in my opinion, as someone who's not good at Souls-likes, it's a cool way to keep you kind of engaged, as it doesn't feel as tough with it, although there's still a bit of challenge for sure with a lot of the bosses and mobs if you're not paying attention. They have what they call a passive like co-op system, where other people that are playing the game can kind of, you can choose to interact with them or not, or have them assist you or attack them, like raids in the Souls games and stuff like that. You also are presented with a fairly sizable weapon selection pool, which is nice. Not so much in terms of choices, in terms of making your character look too amazing or different, but I mean, it's okay. The minimalist aesthetic may not appeal to everybody, but if you are fine with it, or you actually like it, it's definitely a game worth playing, especially if you want more Dark Souls style gameplay. Pretty much just more Dark Souls, but you know, you're not ready to wait for Elden Ring or whatever. But yeah, no, Ashen's definitely worth checking out. At number 8 is Children of Morta. It's a really cool roguelite with an actual sense of progression, in my opinion. Like a lot of roguelites, if you die, I understand that that's kind of the point of it, but you just start to lose, at least I do because I'm not great at them, you start to lose that incentive to want to continue and come back to it after a while. This one has a really cool sense of progression, which I will cover as quickly as I can as I get through this. It has a really cool story following a family called the Bergsons. You go through some procedurally generated dungeons, and the story itself is linear, but as you die, the story itself does continue every few runs. You'll eventually run out of progression if you keep dying too much, but you do keep your gold and skills from each run, which allows you to get the gold, allows you to get more skills, and through that, with those character unlocks, it actually makes it a little easier to finally, you get that skill that helps you finally beat that dungeon, and then you move on and the story does continue, and it's a very intricate and fun story, or deep story, I suppose is a better way to put it, more than fun. It's got character unlocks in, we have your individual skills as well as family skills. There's a lot of emphasis on family, but not just in the narrative or in some corny Olive Garden kind of way. It's one of those things where it actually has a linking thing with some of your skills that goes and affects the entire family. Unless you're really bad, you're going to eventually beat every dungeon, because you're going to keep going up that skill tree, and you're going to eventually get that skill that will help you beat the dungeon that you may be stuck on. Especially the dungeons themselves aren't as difficult as the bosses can be, but again, I'm just really bad at these type of games, so perhaps it could just be me, but that's how I usually see it. Again, the dungeons being procedurally generated, every single time you die and you go back, it's not cut and paste where you can easily remember everything. So, I mean, very roguelike-esque. I'm just kind of describing the genre at this point. The art style itself is very painting-like. It works really good graphically with the Switch, where it's not bogging down the system and runs very smoothly. It's got a really cool and very unobtrusive background score. It's really nice. Again, they take the family motif and beyond just the storyline are able to weave it into the skill progression and otherwise as you discover as you get throughout the game. Children of Morta, definitely a game we're checking out. At number 7 is Alien Isolation. For those of you who didn't play it back in 2015, it was made around the same time when Outlast and Amnesia were still hot, back when the first-person survival horror, because you can't do shit genre, was really popping off. So it's not an outdated game, it's just a port of an old game that not too many people I know played, so it's a nice excuse to show people or revisit it. It's a great take on that type of genre. At that time, admittedly, it was getting overly played, and please ignore my clicking of the notes. It was an overly played genre at the time. Every single thing was trying to ride on the coattails of Amnesia, and even though Outlast did it well, and even arguably PT and Resident Evil 7 later on would do it well, it was its own fresh take in the sense that it took what made the original Alien films style of horror where not much was happening, so when stuff did happen, it was actually exciting, scary, and popping off. This game does a great job of emulating that. Aside being a solid game upon original release, this port to Switch is an absolute graphical marvel. I don't know how they did it. Witcher 3 was an impressive port, but there were some obvious graphical sacrifices, though they were smart ones, and it still looked really good considering. But in Alien Isolation's case, despite the sacrifices that had to be made, it looked great. In some cases, it looked even better than its PS3 or PS4 counterparts. Overall, it is a great horror game, and if you are trying to get the blood pumping and stress levels up, this is an absolutely fantastic game to check out. At number 6 is A Hat in Time. It's a fun and cute puzzle platform, according to the developers themselves. It's not necessarily genre-defining or mind-blowing in a technical sense or anything like that, but it's a really fun game, especially if you are a fan of platformers that were especially popular in the early 2000s and the 90s. It's kind of better played than explained, as you can see in the visuals here. It's very cute and aesthetically, and it's got a lot of fun whimsical music, so it's got a great soundtrack and everything. Its key point is that there's a lot of fun humor that's definitely geared towards kids, but there's like a lot of subtle innuendo and everything that's more geared towards adults, kind of like you're in vein of the old SpongeBob or Ren and Stimpy style, where it's not overly overt, where kids can enjoy it without getting traumatized, but adults could like sit back there and laugh like Beavis and Butthead, going, you know, at the silly jokes that they were making, as far as even going to like really dark or edgy territory, but again, masking it in a way that's appropriate for 10 and up probably. But other than that, this is a really cool and casual game to check out. At number 5, we have Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. It's a better Castlevania game than Konami is probably ever going to make ever again, in the same sense that they fucked up Metal Gear Solid with Metal Gear Survive. But aside that, it came out of a very successful Kickstarter project by Igarashi, the original creator of Castlevania, and after taking quite a bit to come out, it was absolutely brilliant. Now, originally, I wouldn't have advised this port because there were a lot of performance and graphical issues when it first dropped. However, there's been a major patch that dropped a little while ago that remedied a majority of this, and it's definitely a lot better now. It's still not going to be, of course, as brilliant as its PS4 or PC counterparts, but that goes without saying. It's got amazing visuals. Some people may be off-put by the anime aesthetics, but to be fair, you really get over that very quickly, and you kind of get to really appreciate just how good looking the game is. Absolutely brilliant level design. The music is mind-blowingly good, the same way that the Castlevania soundtrack's always been great. It's a good balance of its own original mechanics while definitely harkening back to the classic Castlevania mechanics. Overall, one of the best games for sure on any platform to come out this year. At number 4, we have Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age. It's definitely one of the best and more underrated games in the Final Fantasy series that more people need to check out. And like many games that have dropped on Switch that aren't exclusive or original to it, it definitely deserves the treatment because it's one that needs to be looked at again. It retains a lot of the major graphical marvels from its original release, as well as optimizing them for Switch. It's got a ton of quality of life and accessibility tweaks from all of the previous versions of the game. It's just a cool kind of best of version of it. It blends, for those who haven't played it, it blends kind of like newer style fighting mechanics and running around on the map more and being able to see the mobs and everything like Final Fantasy 15, but it's probably a bit closer to the more classic Final Fantasy games than 15 was. But overall, a great experience, and another cool feature about it is the fact that you can get the original soundtrack or the re-recorded soundtrack that they made for the Zodiac Age version, so that's really cool. And again, definitely one of the better Final Fantasy games that have ever been made, so if you have not played it yet, this is the best excuse to go play it, because it's the best version yet. We are now entering the top 3, and at number 3 is Sayonara Wild Hearts. It definitely took me by surprise, as it wasn't anywhere on my radar before it actually dropped, but once it did, the visual of the thumbnail and the trailer that I watched was really, really cool, and then the more I heard about it, I knew I had to just get into it. It's essentially a playable music video. You play as this protagonist through a bunch of action scenes, and you are moving to the rhythm of each of the music that plays. That's very varied. It's all under the blanketed genre of pop, but it's really got some unique twists to each of the different songs, so they do not sound redundant whatsoever. It only takes about an hour to beat the game, probably an hour and a half to actually go through the whole album, as they would call it. It's very replayable though, and it can be played in chunks or as one continuous run. It's got an awesomely, again, very vibrant, bright colors, neon, like in-your-face art style with some really avant-garde touches to the aesthetics, and it's really awesome for those who are looking for more of an experience than just standard gameplay. If you want some great music, some great visuals, and a great story that is told through actions, I would absolutely suggest checking out Sayonara Wild Hearts, one of my most favorite games of 2019. At number 2 is Platinum Games' Astral Chain. It's definitely one of Platinum Games' most ambitious game attempts in terms of scale. It is such a long game, but in a very good way. In the way that Wonderful 101 almost sounded like it was ending and then realized that you're just getting started with everything. This game's kind of got that going on, where there's a lot of missions, side quests, and everything to do. You basically play as a couple of twin cops, and depending on which one you choose, you experience the narrative by doing the actions of one, but hearing the other one talk. So if you choose the sister, the brother will do all the talking, but you get to customize your player, which is the sister, or vice versa. And of course, that kind of makes you pick your priorities on which one you'd rather hear your experience, and then also play around with in terms of all the plethora of aesthetic and I keep using that word a lot in this video, huh? How do you say, their wardrobe and all that, very customization, character customization. That's the term I was looking for. It's a great blend of Platinum's like signature difficulty, especially through using the unique systems and fighting elements. You're kind of controlling two characters at the same time, which is a little intimidating at first, but once you get used to it and you're learning all the ways you can combo everything with the different monsters and whatnot, it's really, really cool, and it definitely is one of the more unique fighting systems that I've used in a game. Even for Platinum's thing, it kind of got that classic combo style, but at the same time it introduced something new, which is always great to see Platinum kind of keeping things fresh. It's got a very convoluted narrative, like many Platinum Games titles. It's not really where they excel in making very logical or standard issue narratives, but it's more focused on a fun and solid feeling gameplay, which it absolutely knocks out of the park with this one. Whether or not you feel it's one of their better works, it's one of their more polished ones. You're treated with a lot of awesome visuals, and it's filled with all sorts of cool anime-like-esque hype moments with like the music building up. Even the intro is so anime, but definitely check it out. If you're a fan of Platinum Games like Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, or even Vanquish, which Bayonetta and Vanquish are going to be having their anniversary re-release in that cool Steelbook version, I would definitely advise checking out Astral Chain. And finally, at number 1, we have my second most favorite game of all time, right behind Morrowind, Deadly Premonition's Origins. Well, Deadly Premonition originally is my favorite game. Origins is the Switch port. Anyways, it is probably one of the hardest games ever for me to advise, despite being in my top 3 favorite games of all time. Again, my second most favorite game of all time, which is a lot to say because I have a lot of games I've played and a lot of favorite ones. Why is it hard for me to advise? Well, it's broken on a technical level. It's plagued with bad voice acting, horrible sound mixing, awkward moments, all this stuff. And the thing about it is, for every bit of shortcoming that it has, it's got an amazing twist and balance in the gameplay or narrative that really make up for any of its shortcomings. What seems like an incoherent mess at first ends up being a well-orchestrated masterpiece by the end. It's hard to explain without spoiling, which is why, again, it's so hard for me to suggest to people, but I would definitely say that without hyperbole, in my opinion, it is the most underrated and the most misunderstood masterpiece of all time with video games. And I mean that absolutely sincerely. If you want to take a risk on it for $30, do play Deadly Premonition, see if you agree, see if you get it, because getting it is 100% kind of what you need to enjoy it entirely. But if you get it, I promise you, it's a very unique experience you will love and be so excited that Deadly Premonition 2 has been greenlit, announced, and will be coming out for Switch. So definitely check out Deadly Premonition. Probably the first and last time I'm ever gonna go ahead and suggest it. Go buy Deadly Premonition Origins on Switch now. And that wraps it up. My top 10 favorite game releases on Switch in 2019. Again, I made sure not to flood the list with multiple games of the same genre to keep it diverse, but also not losing the point of the list, which is the fact that I feel that these are the 10 best Switch releases of 2019 that you should check out. I'll make another list for my friend that, again, sparked this idea of games that may have not come out this year that his brother should still check out, but that's a whole nother off-topic thing that I don't know why I just brought up right now. Anyways, with the Switch being my most favorite console at the moment, and one of my favorites of all time alongside the Super Nintendo and the PS1, I just absolutely am excited and happy with what the Switch has been doing, where it's gone, and where it's going. And that about wraps it up. Again, I'm going to go ahead and shoot a list on the screen right now with a bunch of honorable mentions. I'm probably missing a few on there, but these were some games that I really enjoyed from this year that I think that if you check all these out on this list as top 10, or maybe you're interested in some of them and you want to sub them with some of these, you should definitely check these out also. These are all great titles. Whatever your favorite ones are, go ahead and shoot them on the comments below, whether it's this year or other years, preferably from this year to keep it relevant to the topic. But yeah, other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Until then, see ya.